विभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्त्वन्निवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। So see the instructions of the Shastra, especially in the form presented in the Mandukya Upanishad. See what the instructions of the Shastras are. Basically what it says is that don't take your experiences of your life very seriously. Why? Why not? Because you're experiencing it. Because you're experiencing it, therefore don't take it seriously. This is what? In fact, the way we think about things is, we only take things seriously if we experience it. Now look at the complete turnaround. See, if I don't experience something, then it doesn't bother me. Like supposing, you have some, I sometimes think about the terrible state that's happening in Iraq and all these places in Arabia where so much, and I was thinking, my goodness, I'm so happy that I'm not there. And you can just read about it and forget about it, go around to the next thing. But supposing it's happening to you, you're experiencing it, how can you ignore it? That is your experience. Shastra says, exactly, follow this. Because you are experiencing it, therefore you should not take it seriously. Why not? Because an experience by its very nature, by its very definition, is false. By its very nature, it is mithya. Because it's an experience, it is mithya. It is just the opposite. Because I have a sense of reality if I have an experience. And the Shastra says that because it's an experience, therefore you should not take it seriously. It is very much like a director or a producer, the people who are doing a play, and they have this enormous 3-act play. And the entire play, they say, is really just a make-believe. Just a make-believe. Or you can say that, for example, when you start a movie, after all those commercials are gone and so on, and now the movie starts, the entire movie, the entire experience of the movie is false. It doesn't mean that you don't enjoy it or that you don't identify with it, don't perhaps even cry or something. It doesn't mean that. But it is not true. This is why the Shastra also says that if you think that false things cannot affect me, and since it affected me, it cannot be false, this logic is not correct. Because you find that even false things in a movie affect you. If the whole thing is about identification, if you are in a movie and it's a good movie, it's a good movie. Sometimes if I don't hardly go to a movie, this is a constant complaint of my wife, but if I do once in a while go to a movie, very once in a while, what happens is I am really mostly not into it. So I keep looking at my watch. And those days are gone when you could actually turn your cell phone on and there's too much light and so on and so forth. That happened in the beginning. But nowadays it is not good form to. So all you can do is look for enough light to look at it. And my wife also looks at me. She says, "Oh my God." You know, she says, "Just suffer through it. Don't worry about it." Mm-hmm. And so unless you are like that, if you are into the movie, then what happens is that your identity is with the characters of the movie. You forget about your own life. You don't think about that at all. You are now totally absorbed where you are identifying with the good and bad, the tragedies and comedies of the movie characters. So it is not true that false things cannot affect me. That's not say, because if you say that, see, this is exactly right, that how can the experiences be false because they are affecting me? So the Shastra says there is no such rule. The rule is that if you identify with it totally, then it affects you. If you don't identify with it, then even though there is an experience, you're not affected by it. So therefore, going back to the original argument, that because it's an experience, you should not take it seriously. And so I ask, shouldn't I take something seriously? Shouldn't I have my whole conclusion based on something? And the Shastra says yes. And what is that? And what it is something that is never experienced. Never experienced. How can that be? How can there be something which is never experienced? Yes. This is the beauty of the whole creation. There is one thing which is there always, but you never experience it. You never experience it as you experience other objects in life. And that is yourself. You, as the very Sakshi, is a very unique individual. You're a unique individual because you are there, but you're not an experiencer. Because here, even the human being as an experiencer is also experienced. That also you are not. As will be shown in the third third verse that we will start today. Jagrita sthana bahishpragya saptanga eko vimshati mukha. So there, what is pointed out, and I think we already talked about it, that really speaking, both the experiencer as we know it and the world that you experience are equally false. Perhaps not equally false, but they're almost equally false. In the sense that you cannot set up the experiences of life until you yourself are there. It's kind of like, you can, when you have a dream, you are the dreamer character, and then you have a lot of other characters that you deal with as they. And you also have an I character which you say, this is me. Both are equally false. Because, in fact, your experiences of life as yourself is also as an experience. Slightly different experience than the world, because you are the constant in all of that. Even though it changes, just like we just did the balyadeshu api jagradadeshu tatha sarvasvavasthasapi vyavritta svanuvartamanam iti antat sparantam sada in the Dakshinamurti Stotra. So even though you have a lot of experiences, but you feel I am an experiencer, ultimately even that has to be discarded. This is our challenge. This is what we have to do. In any way, so going back to the argument of the Shastra, it's any experience you now should start to view as something which is I should not get too worried about. Any experience. And as the Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning of the second chapter, he says, Jatasya hi dhrivo mrityu. He says, don't worry about it. It's just going to, whatever it starts, it's going to go. Or Vyaktadini, what was there at one time, what was not there at one time, it is there today, it is not going to be there today. You can enjoy it, but don't get too worried about it. It's going to go. So this is the premise of the whole Mandukya Upanishad, which says that because it's an experience, it is mithya. Now, the mithya, the very definition of mithya, this is something unique to Hinduism, to Vedanta, because the way the world looks at analyzing the presence of things or the absence of things is a two-way thing. Either it is there or it is not there, binary. Vedanta says no, in fact it is very important to postulate a third state called mithya, which is sat asat vilakshanaha anirvachaniyaha. And why it is important? Because if you don't understand the very concept of mithya, that means every experience will be taken up as real. But in fact, every experience is not true, because just like we saw in the case of a movie, that doesn't mean that it's true, even though it affects you. So similarly, the Shastra says that please start to see in your life that whatever is happening to you is not true. In fact, whatever is happening is not true. What doesn't happen is alone true. And so the Dakshinamurti Stotra makes this very clear. So the Pratyak Vastu, this is an interesting to see, this is how we need to think about it, that I, the Sakshi, the Paramatma, is never manifest. It is never manifest. Not manifest as an object. Never. It's not possible for it to. Now, if there is a and also another thing is that the unmanifest manifests as other things, but not by itself, as we saw in the example of the sun. So the sun, in that case, of course, you can see the sun directly also as an object. That's a different thing. But if you're on a cloudy day, you don't need to see the sun to feel the presence of the sun. This example is brought in very, very well by the 10th man example. So, in the 10th man example, if you recall the very famous example, which actually we will go into in some detail at some point in time. All the details of the steps are very beautiful, and I think we'll study that sometime. But just briefly, the end of that episode of the 10th man was that all the 9 people were asked to be assembled in a straight line, because this fellow is confused as to who the 10th man is. He thinks that the 10th man is lost. And so the wise person makes all the 9 people line up in front of them so that they cannot be missed. And when you count all the 9 people, he doesn't even have to be told that your body is the 10th man. It means you are the 10th man. And that means that just by counting an incomplete set of things, the completion of that is pointed out by saying you, Tat Tvamasi. Similarly here also, going back to the unmanifested state, the unmanifest doesn't mean that I have to see myself as an object. But if I see that all the things are only possible to be completed only because of me, as we said in the meditation, that really only the presence of the Atma makes me see things. So it's very obvious that once I see that the completion of the count, in fact the whole life is nothing but, if you think about it, the entire life, the problem with our life is that we are looking to complete the count of my life. Just like the problem with this crying person was that the count is incomplete. And then the more he searches, the less he is likely to find. And there is no limit to it. You can, unless this is pointed out, he is not going to be happy at all. Because he counts it repeatedly and he says there is only 9 people, there should have been 10. Very similar to that is our case in our life. That really, no matter what we are doing, whatever we are doing, and we are doing a lot of things, we're trying a lot. You know, we get educated, we take care of our health, and we get married, and we are helpful to others, we do non-profit things, and we study, and we do so many things. Our whole life is just busy in doing things. Really speaking, it is searching to make it complete. Really speaking. In fact, that's what keeps us going. This is what keeps us going. And even if we were to give up and commit suicide, that still means I'm searching. I'm searching. The current conditions are not correct. It's tragic. People just lose their hope. And doesn't matter whether you keep on living or you commit suicide or whatever it is, you are trying to complete the count by doing something where you are done. But we are not done. No matter what we are doing something or the other. We are the very presence of our life and what we do. Everybody is doing different things. This means that everyone is looking to complete. And that completion is only possible by carefully analyzing the very nature of the mithya. The nature of the mithya. So that's why in Vedanta, the enunciation and the explanation of the mithya is a very important aspect. We don't find it someplace else. In fact, the Buddhists say they take it to an extreme which is also not acceptable to us, because they say everything is false. Everything is false. We say everything is not false. Everything appears to be false because the definition of mithya is that unless you have satyam, you do not have mithya. So, for example, the classical simplistic example of that is the golden ornaments. So the very form of the ornaments is mithya. But you cannot have gold ornaments without you have gold. So therefore, the completion of the count is Ishvara, Paramatma, which is the very basis of the entire world, but which is not the world, not the way you see it. It is simply an expression of the power of the Shakti of Ishvara. But really, it is not until you cannot complete the count unless you understand the presence of Ishvara as yourself. So therefore, the Upanishad concludes the initial thinking that anything that you experience is not to be taken seriously. And what is to be taken seriously is one that is never experienced, but it is there. This is the beauty. It is never, it is in fact, it is not even the experiencer. It is the one that blesses the experience by its mere presence. By its mere presence, it blesses. And it is missed because of my lack of understanding, my ignorance, self-ignorance. It's just missed, that's all. This is what the whole play of the world is. So here, so the Upanishad says that like in a play where you have a variety of experiences, please see the one person. See, here's what happens. So in the case of acting in a play, your identity, even though you may be for example, in the case of, let's say, watching a movie is better example. In the case of movie, even though you may be very involved with the play and are affected by it, but at any point in time, your identity as a separate person, as the as a viewer rather than as one of the characters can be easily done. All it is somebody next sitting to you will say, please have some more popcorn. Then you are brought back to it and say, oh, I was crying, my goodness, I'm okay. Now, this does not happen as easily in our life. Because why it doesn't happen? Again, the same thing. Until I take an identity which is truly independent of my experiences, I cannot but take my experiences seriously. I have to. And so therefore, really speaking, when the identity of yourself is revealed to you, then I start to view my life differently. Until then, I can't. And the Shastra knows it. It knows it. It's not saying, you fool, you idiot, or anything like this. Just listen. Just stay with it. Just stay with it, and you will see that you'll have a different view of life. You will see it as a play. I don't see it as a play, even though it is a play. So the Shastra says, please stick with me. I'll show you why it is a play. One of the ways that it tells me is by saying, don't you see that you are in 3 different plays? So it's very possible that if the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep were not there, it's only waking. Imagine there's only waking and there's no other thing. It may be a bit more difficult to extract my identity away from my experience. But for the ease of my analysis, 3 different plays are given to me. I don't know, I was just reading this just a couple of days ago. You may have seen this. So when, I'm eating a breakfast or eating something, I always look for all the news from Google News and different kind of things and so on. So this news came up. So the scientists are trying to figure out, because they're always trying to see the reason for it and so on. Why is there this rapid eye movement when you are asleep, REM sleep? You may have heard about this. Are you aware of the REM sleep? So there's been a lot of mystery about the nature of the REM sleep and why is it there. So what they found was that there is, I think a sea lion, I forget the name of the sea creature. So when the sea lion is in the deep, because the sea lion can be underneath the water also, and then it goes above the water and can just sun itself on the beach. What they found was that when the sea lion is in the water, which is cold, and is actually, because the animals also dream, they also go to sleep. And so when they are in the water, there is no REM sleep. And when they're on the beach, there is REM sleep. And they were trying to figure out what. So they came out with an explanation. And the explanation is that the REM sleep is to keep your brain warm and active. And when they are in the deep depths of the ocean, everything is cold, you're sleeping, and they don't need to warm up the brain. But when they come out and actually go to sleep on the beach, then their brain needs to be activated. Anyway, this is just an interesting thing. In the Shastric view, the reason there is dreaming is to make it easier for you. There are lots of other reasons also. Certainly there is rest for the brain and all that can be happening. But it's a very interesting thing why don't we just have two states? One is Jagrat Avastha, and one is deep sleep. Why do we have dreaming? I tell you, the dreaming is a very good way for us to see that all experiences are not real. And this argument will be much more difficult if there was only Jagrat Avastha. Just look at it that way. I should write this article and send it to the scientists and see what they think about it. So, this is the situation. So the Ishvara makes it a bit easier for us to see, because it says you are acting in three plays at the same time. Think about it. And the experiences of our three plays are all different. And you are none of them. You are none of them. And so there, it is very much like, another way is like what the example we gave, like a woman that has different roles in her life. She's a mother to the kids, and she's an office worker. She goes to work, and then she has a bunch of friends that they get together and enjoy. Three roles. So now the question is, it's very interesting to see, when she is with her children or grandchildren, she has a certain personality, a certain way of dealing with people, with her own family, her expectations, happiness and lack thereof. There's a certain way of doing that. This is one play. And so she's, when she's a mom or a grandmother, this is one play. Now, when you go to the work, it's an entirely different world. It has nothing to do with children and meals and taking them to school or anything. It is just software or something like that. Different world altogether. So from this we conclude that the same person is not any different. It's the same person that assumes different identities, and within the identity there is a whole set of issues that only deal with that identity. It's a different world altogether. Similarly is our situation, that we have three different identities. One is as a waker, one as a dreamer, and one as a sleeper. But I'm the same person. Same person. So now this is sketched out a little bit on the one. So in the verse number 3, we've already done verse number 1 and 2. We're on the third one, just to revise that very quickly. Jagrita sthanaha bahishpragyaha saptangaha ekona vimshati mukhaha sthula bhuk vaishwanaraha prathama padaha. So, prathama pada means that there are four segments to each person's life, 4 different movies, if you may. One which is ultimately yourself, which is not really a movie. It is the actor in the movie. But the other 3 are definitely movies. And in the Jagrita Sthana, what happens is, so, and here, by the way, Sthana, see how its English translation goes. So, it is called the state, waking state. Jagrita Sthana is the waking state. So the waking state means the waking identity. There's no other state as per se. But the word sthana means an identity, just like the woman has a worker identity. As soon as she goes to work, her whole identity changes. If she's a boss, then people will say, "Good morning, madam." In India, they will do even more. They'll carry the tea for you and all kinds of things. Here, they'll call you by your first name, And but there is a certain identity in moving with it. So this is called the sthana, jagrita sthana. Bahishpragya. So bahishpragya means the outside knowledge. The English translation will be outside knowledge. So Swami Mahesharanji makes a big commentary on it. In fact, the whole verse is like 30-40 pages. Which I think a lot of that we have done already in the first one. But here he says, Bahishpragya doesn't mean some light coming from outside. It doesn't mean that. Bahishpragya means the outside awareness. It means that the awareness is intricately tied up with things that appear to be outside of you. It's the same pragya. But now the pragya is defined by so-called outside things. But in reality, there is nothing outside, as will become clear as we study it. But for now, what appears to be outside, actually speaking, both in the dream state and in the Jagrat space, things appear to be outside. But in one case, they really are shared by other people as well. So they are external. But in the case of dream, which will be the next one, swapnasthanaha antah pragya. Antah pragya means that the pragya which is lighted up within your own mind. As we were studying, I think, in the Tuesday night class, the difference between sthula sharira and sukshma sharira is that the sthula sharira is seen by others. The sukshma sharira is only seen by you. That's the main difference. And this is how the world is defined, because you do have to transact, you do have to go through your experiences and so on, and you cannot do that without having a body. If you just hear sounds and you don't know where it is coming from, it's very difficult. So it gets localized into one person. And that person has a history, has a future, and so on. Anyway, so the difference between Bahishpragya and Antahpragya is that one which is done through the Sthula Sharira, and the one which is primarily done through Sthula Sharira. Because remember, the Sukshma Sharira is also present in the Jagrata Avastha. So you cannot say that there's clear demarcation. No. But it is primarily held by Sthula Sharira, Bahishpragya, outside the sounds. Whereas in the Swapnavastha, you create your own version of that through the vasanas. That's all. Anyway, let's completely go on. Then, so, ekona vimshati mukha. So mukha means the mouth. 19 mouths. And why is the Shastra using the word mukha? So 19 mukha. 19 are the 5 sense organs, 5 karmendriyas, 5 pranas, 15, Then you have manaha, buddhihi, memory, chittam, and ahankaraha, the I-ness. These are the 19. These are the 19. So why are these called 19 mukha? The reason is that the Shastra explains that you actually experience many of the things through your mouth. You eat things, and even the smell, etc., finally is contributing to whether you eat it or not. So, and the talking. So the mouth is a very important part of transactions. So something was taken as an example. So this is like that. So the 19 things are through which you experience things. What is called grahana. So grahana means to grasp. So you grasp things with the help of these 19 things. That's why they are called mouths. And so, so this is there. Then we saw that both the experiencer and the experience world are included in this, in the Jagrata Avastha. So the experiencer is called Vishwa, and the world that you experience is called Vaishvanara or Virat, one of the same thing. Okay, so both of them are included in this. The world you experience and what you as the experiencer. So now we are pretty much done with the exception of Saptanga. So Saptanga means 7 different main parts to this. And the elements of experiencing are through Ekona Vimshati Mukha, 19. Sthula Bhuk Vaishwanaraha, Prathama Padaha. This is the first one. So now the Saptanga. So let's look at the Saptanga. What are they? Well, one other thing, it's interesting. In the Ekona Vimshati Mukha, there are, Swami Maheshanji gave this example. He says, you know, if you analyze energy, it has 2 segments. What is called potential energy and one is called kinetic energy. So one is visible energy, things moving, and the other one is the potential for doing that. So in the 19 Ekona Vimshati Mukha, so here's the interesting thing. The pranaha is the potential energy for doing karmas. And the actual movement of hands and legs and eyes and so on are the kinetic energy. And the potential energy which creates the kinetic energy are the pranas. Similarly, the 4 functions of the mind, which is manaha, buddhihi, ahankara and chitta, is the potential energy for the actual thoughts, conclusions. And so this is how the demarcation between the energies and the potential energy is given. Anyway, so that was one thing. Going back to the Saptangaha. So now the Saptangaha are, let me borrow some notes from Swami Paramarthananda. So these are the 7 limbs which are common between the individual person like you and I, which is Vishwa, and Vaishvanaraha. So there is a one-to-one correspondence between them. And in fact, the individual person is nothing but derived from Vaishvanaraha. Vaishwanara has all of the macro qualities, and then individually, depending upon our situation in life, our karmas, we take a portion of that and make it my own. Like, for example, the first limb is the head of the human being and the heavens of the entire creation. There is a one-to-one correspondence. Why do we say that? Because the head is the one that leads your life in thinking, acting. So if you look at the rest of the limbs, like the hands and so on and so forth, they follow the lead of the head. So the head is the most important one in leading the effulgence of life. Similarly, the heavens, where the devatas are, and the presence of the Ishvara is very well known. And these are thinking people that have paradarshina, they can think very far, is the head of the whole universe. So there is a one-to-one correspondence. This is the first limb. Then the second correspondence is the eyes for the human being and the sun for the heavens, for the entire creation. Because the eyes illuminate. Eyes, this is a person who's born a blind, really misses out a great deal of detail and so on. You can only hear things, but eyes reveal. So similarly, the sun reveals. So the second limb is the sun for Vaishwanaraha and eye for the human being. So this is the number 2. Then the atmosphere, the air, the oxygen is responsible for my breath, for movement, for being alive. And similarly, the entire atmospheric creation. So this is where we were talking about the air and akasha, vayu and akasha. So this is the vayu. This is a beautiful creation where around the earth's a certain circumference there is actually something happening with the air. Beyond that there is akasha, which will come in a minute. But it's not necessary because the people have to live in a close to the earth. So therefore, the third limb is the vayu, my breath, for the human being, and the entire atmosphere of the creation. Okay? Fourth one is the mouth. And the mouth for the human being is equal to the fire of the entire creation. In fact, the whole life comes from the doing ahuti to your mouth. You eat, you sustain yourself. This is a very important part of the whole body. And in fact, the sustenance of the Jatara Agni is done through food, which is consumed through the mouth. So similarly, the fire in the whole creation is the mouth of the creation. In fact, this is why in the Vedic homas, everything is offered to the fire. So this is the fourth one. Then the entire space is the body. Entire space. And the space is what the body of a human being is, the one that holds everything together. The entire body. And so similarly, the space is the one that holds all the various manifestations together. You cannot have that without the space. The space has lots of other things also. But here, this is the fifth one. Sixth one is having to do with water. Water is important, both the intake of water as well as the elimination of water. And so food is possible only by water. The digestion, everything, water is a very important part of the whole creation. So therefore, the lower part of our body that deals with water, the retention, the urine, and all of that, is the sixth one. And the oceans that create the very substance that is evaporated in clouds and then goes back into the rain by itself, and all of that is considered to be the kind of like the bladder of the whole universe. And to this day, frankly, I don't know, I'm going to ask Swami Viditakanandaji when he comes. I'm not sure why the sea has salt in it. It has never been clear to me. Maybe the Shastra says something. I think now it's a good time. I'm going to talk to Swamiji if he has an explanation. I'm not sure what the reason for that is. Why is it that the ocean cannot be drinkable by itself? There must be some reason for it. And anyway, so that's the sixth one. Then the seventh one is the earth and equivalent to the legs of the human being. The legs hold the body. It is the fulcrum on which everything rests. And the earth is also the fulcrum on which the entire creation rests. This is what things happen. So these are the saptangaha, the 7 different limbs of the creation. So now we can even go to the fourth one because it is not that difficult, they're not that different from this. So we have pretty much covered the first pada, which is the first set of experiences, first movie, if you may, first set of identification. And the second one, the second movie, is Dvitiya Padaha, which mantra says, Swapna Sthanaha Antaf Pragyaha Saptangaha Ekona Vimshati Mukaha Pravivikta Bhuk Taijasaha Dvitiya Padaha. So here, again, your personality changes. Like, for example, that example of a woman. So the first one was when she's a mother. So she has a certain personality. In fact, her name is different. People call her mom or grandma. And that name is given up when you go to work. Nobody calls her mom. They call her by the first name or dear madam or whatever. So the name given to there has to be a different name for the dreamer. So that is called Taijasaha. Taijasaha means one which is primarily just thoughts. Tejaha, thoughts, Taijasaha. And on a macro level, this is called Hiranyagarbha. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. Pravivikta bhook is an important thing to see. Pravivikta means totally different. Totally different. Pravivikta. Prakarshena vivikta. So, other than the fact that you have some impressions from Jagrata Avastha, your experience of the Swapna Avastha is totally different. The examples given are that you have had a very good meal just before you're going to sleep, but you feel hungry in Swapna. Or the opposite. You have lots of money in Jagrata Avastha and you feel very poor. Has no relationship whatsoever. You just imagine something totally different. It's not as though it is almost the same, nothing like that. So, Pravivikta book, Taijasaha Dvitiya Padaha. So, otherwise it is the same. You still have prana active, mind active. You still do things in both the avasthas. You think about things in the same way. It's just that the entire thing is just made up by your own mind. Whereas the other side, it is commonly shared between other people. Otherwise, it is exactly the same. So that's how it is. It's presented. So all the way to show that please don't take your experiences seriously. And the state in which this will be proven to you, that time, this is the start, and when it ends, it will be, you will see your identity being separate from these three identities. Then your job is over. Then you will see that your life is fulfilled and you complete the count which you are missing at the moment. This is the direction of the Upanishad that we go, and we'll continue next time. Om Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahishaha Guru Brahmanebhya Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu Kale Varshatu Parjanyaha Prithvi Sasya Shalini Desho Yam Shobharahitaha Brahmana Santu Nirbhaya Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Durgha Bhaved Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om.
Purusha Sukta, it clearly explains all this from Virata Purusha, what comes from the mouth, what Chakshur, Surya.
Yeah, very much so.
You can see the one-to-one correspondence.
Oh, absolutely. Purusha Sukta actually is a very important explanation of the Virat Purusha. And yeah, very much so. Yes.
I must have missed it the last time we did it, this question. I understand why we have 19 mouths for the Vaishnava state, but when you are sleeping, your karmendriyas are turned off and your sense organs are turned off.
So they are not turned off because you're still acting. In the dream, you are still saying, oh, no, I want to do this, I want to go there. So that is the semblance of the karma indriyas. So the very copy of that is the presence of the karma indriyas. So they are not absent completely. They are only absent in deep sleep, but in dream, no, they are all active. You utilize it differently. You imagine things, but the ingredients, see, that's the thing. The ingredients of your dream are very similar. You have to act out, and then you say the same thing. That's why it is so real, because you feel, you can even say in your dream, I was thinking this is not a good idea. Or then you say, let's do it this way. All of those things happen in the dream. So they're all present. Yeah.
In the beginning, we were talking about mithya.
Yeah.
You mentioned something saying sat, asat, alakshanaha, anirvachaniya.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
So what is called, this is a definition of mithya, or which is also an expression of maya. Anirvachaniya means, nirvachaniya, there's a nirvachaniya means one which is very definitely, which is definable very definitely. It's called nirvachaniya. Anirvachaniya is just the opposite. It doesn't mean that it cannot be defined, we don't know. That's a very important thing. But it cannot be definitively defined because it is neither here nor there. It is sat, asat, vilakshana. It is neither sat. Because the definition of sat is that which never changes. Vyabhicharati, never changes. And asat means which is never there. Not possible for it to be there. Like the example given is that of the horns of a human being. Not possible for it to be there. Or the horns of a rabbit, for example. Not possible. Or a square circle. Not possible. So that is called asat. And sat, there is only one vastu which is sat, which is the self. Anything else between, in fact the whole creation is something in between. Yeah.
So alakshanaha.
Vilakshanaha means separate. Sat, asat, vilakshanaha. Neither sat nor asat, and therefore called anirvachaniya. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that the pratiti means just taking things just without analyzing, and prama is the one where you look at the reality of the pratiti. So even though the example that of the modern movie, that even though the screen is very closely associated with what is projected on it, but really not affected by it all. So for example, Swami Maheshananji was saying that the water of the movie doesn't wet the screen. The fire in the movie doesn't burn the screen. Even though you cannot have the water or the fire without the screen. It's a beautiful example. Similarly is the Atma. I cannot have experiences without me, but the experiences do not touch me. This is the beauty I have to investigate. How is that possible? So eventually, we have to see this is what our meditation will slowly get into, is asangoham. The asangata of this is This is not clear in the beginning, but it is a fact. Only then, when the asangata is clear, then I'm done. Then my life is fulfilled. Yeah, Rani?
If the experiences are mithya and they do not touch us and they are sort of outside of our core aham,
Yeah.
then what's the value of those experiences?
The value experiences are that they should make you think. So, the value of it is that we are already complete, but we don't realize it. We don't take ourselves to be a complete being. So, the experiences should both give me a clue to it and a hope for it. So because otherwise I'm chasing my tail. In fact, there is a larger truth to it which the experiences hint at. And so my experiences have to be slowly. So for example, what I'm saying is that one of the things it should be clear to us is that right now I am dependent on my experiences to make me happy. I want the experiences to for a certain way, and then I evaluate myself through the experiences. If there is a bad experience, then I try to avoid it. If there is a good experience, I try to extend it. So, in all cases, I am really dependent on the experiences. Slowly, however, I have to think, is there an end to this? Because my quest is always to be independent. My happiness is only when I'm independent, not at the mercy of something else. And the moment I start inquiring, is it possible for me to be totally independent? And I should see the defect in experiences, my dependencies and others. So the Shastra, there's kind of like a push and pull, Viveka and Vairagya. First of all, it says, yes, it is possible. It's possible for you to be independent. And don't you see, and this is where the Vairagya comes in, this is an important part of the whole thing, don't you see that the less you are dependent on the experiences, the happier you are. Don't you see that? And so there in that experiment of what the Shastra is saying is the value of the experiences. That this is never going to end. I'm always going to be dependent on things. And I want independence. How when am I going to be independent? And the Shastra says it is possible for you to be independent. Because before that I never even knew. But with the Shastra says, yes, then I begin the whole quest and use the very realm of my experiences to test out the theories. That really speaking, when I find that I am not really just totally asakta, asakta means I'm just dependent on the very love of people and so on and so forth, then I'm okay. And here the deep sleep is important, your own life's experiences are important. All of that has to be fodder for your own thinking. That's how the experiences are important. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Apparently, from all the reasoning, nobody forced anybody to come and become this. And now we want to get out of it. So why is this going on?
So this is as though it never began. So the whole play of the universe is that everyone has to discover the independence of themselves and the unity with Ishvara. Everyone. And it is never as though they are different, but they think they are different. So this is the play. It's always been there from the very beginning. It's not as though you started it or something like this. So that's the... so they say, this is an important thing to see, that at the macro level there is no evolution. At the micro level there is an evolution. For you and I as an individual, it's a quest that will take us from life to life until I discover my own identity. And so it is, if you want to say this is the nature of the creation, so be it. There's no other way to explain it.
So if it's a cycle and going round, and so once you discover and become unified with the consciousness, universal, then will it again bring you back?
No, of course not. There's no question of being back because you are everything. It's like saying that, in the simplistic example we've been taking, that if once the room space is told that, why do you want to be bigger? He says, no, I don't like myself. I want to be something like a big hall. I said, why? He said, I don't know. I think that would be better. I say, you are already space. Don't you see that? He said, no, I don't see that. I only think I'm a room space. So at some point in time, you are total space, this is infinity, and then you enjoy the other limitations and not your limitation, let them worry about it. I am the total space. So there's no coming back. You are the total infinity.